Sonya and I are gonna do a joint presentation. She's gonna help me fill in the spot that I can't do, and we're gonna kind of collaborate on a number of things here. So today, I've been in the mortgage industry for, I think it's been 18, 19 years, something like that. Just a lot of experience with forwards, with reversers, with lines of credit, with construction. That's my little intro.
Thanks for that intro.
Yeah.
And I'm Sonya Wong, and I am a CPA and financial professional. I've been working in the accounting industry for the past 25 years. And most of it has been in corporate accounting. And then I moved on to work at a CPA firm and basically help clients with their audit and tax planning. And then later on moved into real estate accounting. So, I know a little bit about Jesus's world as well, and as well as property management. And now, I'm focusing on helping people with their retirement planning, their long-term care, and it's needed because we have a large aging population. And the work that Paul does and the work that I do can really make a difference in the quality of someone's retirement.
So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to introduce a concept that basically is going to show you the 3 buckets of money that you have in life. So first, I guess everybody is very familiar with a 30-year fixed mortgage, right? At the beginning, you make payments, long payments over a period of 30 years, and slowly, right, what you owe goes down. Less familiar for people is a reverse mortgage, and sometimes it has a negative connotation. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but basically a reverse mortgage is the exact opposite, right? You start off with a little balance, and over a period of time it increases because the interest is being paid by the mortgage. Where do you get your money? Right? It's from your career. And all the people that are W-2 employees, they get their money from their job. And why do we need money? What do you need money for?
Taxes. Everything.
Everything. So you're gonna true. And most people save a percentage of what they make. And Sonya could talk more about that and what people do. What do you see as a typical average for what people would save?
They should aim for at least 10%, but we know that doesn't happen, right? Because we hear about stories where people have problems coming up with $500 to fix, some type of home emergency or car emergency.
But let's just pretend it's going to be 10 to 15% that people put into assets for the future, right? And then the other sort of bucket is equity. So if you are buying a home, right, then you have that bucket available to you. But if you're renting, then you're basically paying for somebody else's equity, right? And that is usually, right, the national average is 29% debt to income, but it's usually 25 to 40% of somebody's income. So that's why people kind of get emotional, I guess you'd say, about a reverse mortgage, because they're putting a huge percentage of their income into the house. What do you use income for? Food, gas, daily expenses.
As you retire, you want to take Social Security. So it's anywhere from 62 to age 70. That's the age at which you would be able to take Social Security. For people born after 1960, their full retirement age would be 67. They'll probably change that as time goes by, right? Because you know that Social Security is under quite a bit of strain. Some members of Congress trying to either push the age further along down the line, or cut it, or just try to take entitlements off the table. If you have heard that in the news, that's one of their mandates, right? But if they want to get reelected, right, they'll have to find a sneaky way to take that away or cut it down. So a few people are lucky enough to get pensions, and generally they're able to take that between the ages of 60 to 70. And then most employees have 401ks, And the age at which you can start taking distributions from your 401k is 59 and a half. And the latest you can take it is at age 72. Congress just passed the Secure 2.0 Act. So in 2033, that age is going to be moved to 73. And then SEPs, the age is also from 59.5 to 72. Traditional IRAs, oh, I can't think that's all together. Yeah, traditional IRAs also 59 and a half to age 72. And those ages will be changing to 73, effective December 31st, 2033. And then Roth IRAs, you can start taking the distributions out at 59 and a half. But there is no minimum or maximum age at which you can take it out. You can take it out whenever, take distributions out whenever you want. Okay, so you know, that way you don't get taxed on it. You don't get taxed on any distributions taken from your Roth IRAs. And then brokerages, those are what are called tax now vehicles. So you would get taxed when you take distributions from those accounts, or whatever interest or dividends you earned on stocks or mutual funds you're holding, any type of investments you're holding. And then of course, our savings account, right? That trustee savings account from the banks and the credit unions, when you earn interest on those on that money, you get taxed on the interest.
And many of those accounts, right? I mean, a lot of us are fortunate enough to have some Roth IRAs, but many of the accounts people have, that money is taxed, right? When you take it out. Equity on the home, what are the two ways to get the equity out of your house?
Sell
You guys know?
it.
Sell it, right? And if you're single, 250 tax-free in gain, or 500 tax-free in gain on the property. And if you're, what's the other way?
1031 exchange. Is that what it is?
You could do that if it's an investment property, yeah.
HELOC.
You can take out a loan, right? You can take out a HELOC or lots of different methods to taking the money out. But when you take that money out of the house and you have a loan, what do you have to do?
Pay it.
Pay it, right? And it's forced. You have to make that payment. What happens if you don't make the payment? You lose your house, right? They'll foreclose on your home. And that's called, when you take out a loan like that, it's a recourse loan. It means that they can take the house if you don't make payments, of course. And I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but a reverse mortgage is a non-recourse loan. So what does that mean? It means that regardless of what the balance is on that mortgage, even if somehow it's greater than what the house is worth, you and the heirs don't owe any money for whatever that balance is. And so it's just a lot of people don't understand that, and they think, oh, they're gonna take my house. No, nobody can take your house. You pay your property taxes, you pay your insurance, and you don't have any obligation. So you don't have to make a payment with a reverse mortgage. Can you? Yes. A lot of people do pay the taxes, and I mean, they have to pay the taxes, but they'll pay the interest on the mortgage if they want to, and you certainly can. And when you pay the interest, what happens? You get, just like a forward mortgage, what do you get when you do your taxes? You get something that you're able to write off. Now, not everybody's able to write off interest. Depends on, and you have to talk to your CPA or financial planner.
Yeah.
To see if you can write it off. Sometimes you have, you have a standard deduction and you have to exceed that standard deduction. So it's important to strategize, with someone like Sonya and figure out how to use these standards.
Right, yeah. Because for married couples, the standard deduction is about, 26,000. So if you have itemized deductions that are higher than that, then you can use the itemized deductions.
Right. But a lot of these plans, that you have, like say a 401k, you put that money in, right? But the government is counting on getting that money from you. They want theirs, and that's what we call The IRS.
Yeah.
They're always gonna get theirs, right? And so, some of what we're gonna talk about is this time, and we're probably gonna do a presentation again to give specific examples, but some tools are available, that are tax-free, right? And one of the things about equity in the home is that is, when you take equity out of the home, that's not taxed. So for a reverse mortgage, basically, you need to be 62 or older, right? To do a reverse mortgage. And again, those payments are voluntary. If you want to pay the interest, you can, but you don't have to, right? So some people, as an example, might take out this loan while they're still working and pay the interest. And there's a reason and a rationale to do that. They'll talk about another day. But at some point in the future, right, you may not have a job, right? You're going to retire. And then what happens? Then the income stream is gone, right? But you still have to pay for the food, the gas, and your daily expenses. So you're left with these two buckets, right? That you can pay those things from. Most people understand assets, right? That, okay, I've got a 401k and I'm going to take distributions from my 401k for retirement. A lot of people don't understand the equity part of it. They're just two pockets in your pants. And at the end of the day, you take the stuff out of your pockets and that's what you have left. But if you could figure out a way to use those pockets effectively, so you end up with more money, that's what this is about. It's about taking advantage of things that are tax-free.
A buffer asset is, basically an asset you can use without digging into your other retirement assets, right? Thereby causing you to pay more in taxes, right? And helping you weather market risk as well as inflation. So, you can use your buffer asset to give you some breathing room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but to give you an example, if, let's say my grandma had a 401k and someone said, would you say, like on a reverse mortgage, somebody might say, oh, you know what? I got a reverse mortgage and they took all the equity out of my grandma's home and it was the worst, right? But if she had a 401k, she took that money out to live with that money. And there was no money left in the 401k, would that son say, you took all the money out of your 401k? No,
Yeah.
of course not. Right? It's just two different buckets of where you're spending money and how wisely can you do that to make sure you have the most money at the end, right?
Or grandma could ask you for the money.
There you go. That happens too. But usually I will say, having been in this business a long time, that people use the reverse mortgage as the mortgage of last resort, right? They've blown through all these assets. People live longer than they expect, which is a great problem to have, but they outlive their assets. And then they go to their mortgage to, look at what can we do to stay in this house, to pay for long-term care, or whatever it is. But there's advantages to having that in place ahead of time. A lot of times it's taxable when you take money out. When you take money out of equity, that's tax-free. Because you get a write-off when you pay interest, there is strategies that you can use to transition money from taxable assets to Roth IRAs, as an example, using tools like this.
If you look at this graph, it shows you, the typical scenario, retirement scenario, where a retiree, let's say that he or she starts out with $1 million when they retire. You see that there are some downturns. All those dips that you see, those are downturns. And let's take a look at, the solid blue line, where the retiree, regardless of what's happening in the market, right, they're taking those distributions. So can you see how dramatically their wealth dips if they, keep taking money from their retirement assets, where they don't get a chance to maybe skip a distribution? This is for someone who doesn't have any buffer assets. They're just solely relying on their retirement assets. So what if he or she took a different approach, right? And let's say the first downturn that they experienced, which is 1967, which is this gray line here, you know, at least they would have some money left. They're not in bad shape like this person who took all distributions through all those downturns.
Think of it like a cow, right? If you had a cow and you could just take the milk to live on, right?
The interest.
The interest,
Yeah,
it's awesome, right? You still got the cow.
Yeah.
But when you start taking chunks of beef off the cow, right, there's gonna come a time when you got, no more milk, no more cow. I mean, it's probably after the first chunk of beef, it's gonna start getting things. But, and the next slide really shows, you know, if you have a buffer asset, like a reverse mortgage, or like a life insurance, a whole life insurance policy that has a cash value, these are tools, right, that you can use. And it can be done very simply. It sounds complicated, right? But it's just like we said, if you have interest in your account, then take the interest. If you don't, because the market's way down, then use your buffer asset.
Yep.
It's just like that. And by doing that, you can end up with more money, right? And that's beyond all these other strategies we talk about transitioning money to tax-free investments.
has anyone heard of the safe withdrawal rate? Okay, so, okay, so be prepared to be educated. Yeah, so, you know, so the safe withdrawal rate, is basically the rate at which you should withdraw from your retirement assets so that you don't outlive your retirement assets. So the retirement experts, as documented in Investopedia, Fidelity, and a couple of other, you know, authoritative publications, they recommend that you withdraw no more than 3.3% from your retirement assets. It used to be 4%, like as recently as 2 years ago, it was 4%. But they had to revise the withdrawal rate. So just think of this as, you know, you should shoot for this number so that you don't run out of money before you pass away.
Is that per month?
Per year, per year. Yeah. So you can see why it's important for us not to solve for taxes. One of the most vulnerable vehicles, retirement vehicles, in terms of being taxed is the traditional IRA as well as a 401k, because you're being forced to take it out by the age of 72. And it's going to be 73 effective next year. And then in 2035, it's going to be 2033 is going to be age 75. They push the age back to 75. What we want to do is we want to find a way where your retirement assets aren't subject to taxes. So who controls the tax rates and the tax brackets? Is it any of us? Nope. Who do you think controls that? Yep, exactly. Congress and the president. So, you know, we want to find a way where, you know, you're protected from too much and paying too much in taxes. So we have 3 different buckets in terms of vehicles you would use, like different tax treatments. One of those is the tax now bucket, and it would include things like your brokerage account, stocks, your bonds, your mutual funds, as well as things like CDs or savings accounts. And then tax deferred, those are the tax later assets, right? Things like the TSP, right, the thrift savings plan, and then the 401ks, traditional IRAs, 403bs, that's kind of like the public school equivalent of 401ks, and 457, that's like a special deferred compensation account, and then some annuities. And then that third tax bucket, which we should all try to include in our retirement planning. Well, one of those would be municipal bonds, and they don't really, municipal bonds are kind of like the dogs of the tax-free category, because the yields aren't very high, So the next one would be your Roth IRA. So if you already started a Roth IRA, hey, good for you. You can take money from your Roth IRA without triggering a tax event. And then the tax-free retirement account, which is the use of a specially designed cash value whole life policy. And then, heck, the reverse mortgage.
Yeah.
Tax-free asset. If you look on your tax return, you'll see that there is no line, for loan, like cash flow from reverse mortgage or cash flow from your, whole life, cash value distributions. And the other thing is the long-term care insurance is when you get the benefits, you're not taxed on those. So if you have a health care, long-term care need that arises, at least you won't be triggering a taxable event.
I just want to say one thing too,
Sure.
that we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
Is that also, like, when you look at social security, right? It's another important tool, but you can't just go social security and find out what your options are. You need to talk to a
Mhm.
professional financial advisor, right?
Yep.
And get the advice, especially if you're married. And tools like the tools that Sonya is talking about, like the whole life insurance, or maybe the reverse mortgage, can help you to say, okay, I'm not gonna take out till this time because I'm gonna earn 8% per year that I don't take that money out. So it's just important to have a plan and to work with, somebody like Sonya and figure out when should I do that.
So if we could use a buffer asset, like what we just talked about, that would be great.
And you can't take social security and be working at the same time, right?
You can work like part-time, but after a certain point, your social security can be taxed as well, right? If you bump up into the next tax bracket, right? Or if 50% of your social security plus the income that you earn exceeds a certain amount, then up to 85% of your social security can be taxable.
So,
Gotta have
So
a
it
plan.
kind of discourages people from working,
but I can still do a paid job or two a
You can
month
still
or
do a
something.
paid job, yeah, as
Depending-
long
You
as
just
it's,
gotta stay below that.
yeah, the
number.
threshold.
Below the
Yeah.
table.
Yeah, no, it's a very,
Below the table.
Below the table.
There you go. There's a buffer asset.
good analogy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in addition to tax risk, we're also guarding against market risk, right? When your retirement assets take a hit from the market, especially if your retirement assets are made up of mutual funds and stocks and, well, now bonds, right? Because bonds have an inflation risk. So, I know this is kind of small, but you see this 45% dip here, that represents that great financial crisis that we all went through. And if you were to try to recover from that, and the following years, the average rate of return was only 4%, it would take you 13 years to recover from that downturn. If the subsequent years you were earning an average of 8%, it would take you 6.6 years to recover it. Right? And if your portfolio somehow achieved a 12% return in the following years, it would take you almost 5 years to recover. So
that's why when you look at that chart where we showed like all those different hits that might happen over time,
Mhm.
if you have a way to avoid that, I don't know if you remember, that the very top line shows what happens if you have a method to avoid it. That this is basically what he's talking about. If you have a method to avoid the downturns, you can end up having more money in your account. Is basically the bottom line.
Oh, that's good. Tax free is what's helping that graph go up.
Yes.
By using that asset, instead of taking money from instead of taking the distributions, using the tax-free asset, you can have your money continue to grow. This is the bottom line. If you take money out when you're down, it's like you're double killing yourself.
Yep.
So if you're 62 and you still have a regular mortgage because you can't get a reverse until you're 62, then do you work with somebody to change that mortgage, or how does that work if you're in that? If you're in a normal
Yeah,
mortgage situation?
So a reverse mortgage is really based upon the equity in the home and your age. So they can work with somebody like me, to look at it and see, okay, what can you do, right? If you have a lot of equity in your home, then you can just transition to a reverse mortgage. It just depends on, like I said, how much equity there is and how old they are, how those numbers are gonna play out.
You essentially like buy out your home.
You just
with
switch
it.
in the one loan for another, right? Which, you think about it, think about taking money out of, after you retire, taking money out of an asset, paying the IRS. So if I had $1,000 mortgage, I take out $1,250, I give the IRS $250, and then I pay my mortgage. When instead I could do a reverse mortgage and have that $1,250 continue to grow. It's just a different strategy.
And you don't have to make a loan payment if you don't want to. You know, with a reverse mortgage. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
The reverse mortgage is only for the property that you need, or you can do
Yes,
it multiple.
primary
properties?
mortgage, no, just
It's for your house, yeah.
it's your principal residence.
Okay.
I wanna say it's a big number. It's like 11 or 13 trillion. That's how much seniors have in equity in their homes. In the United States, it's a big number. They just can't figure out how to get it
Out,
Out.
yeah. And
without selling.
When people take reverse mortgages, what do they typically do with this lump sum that they get? Do they put, where do they put that?
It's a great question.
Build a
But,
ADU.
yeah, sometimes they build an ADU,
Good.
but,
Or income.
but sometimes they don't take any money out. Sometimes they're just paying off an existing mortgage as an example. Sometimes they're just getting a line of credit. And then that line of credit, your access to the equity in the home grows over time by a fixed percentage. So a lot of people will just let that line of credit grow. It could far exceed the value of the house, or, you know, the loan that you have, or whatever the case may be. So that's a choice as well. Not interest, it's access to the money in the house. Does that answer your question?
Kind of.
You can do anything with it, but as a mortgage person, we have to make sure that people aren't putting it into certain financial products.
So if Janie owns a house.
Yeah.
Paid off, it's worth $1 million. She
Yeah.
gets a reverse mortgage. She now has access to $1 million because there's no encumbrance, right?
Right.
So if that $1 million, does it just stay there and she draws from it?
Yeah, it's like a line of
Does that
credit.
$1 million grow in any way?
Yeah,
The line of credit, whatever the line of credit is.
that
will
you don't
grow-
use.
That you don't use will
Yeah.
grow at a fixed percentage,
Okay.
right? It's just access to the equity in the home will grow at a fixed percentage. They only give you a certain percentage. It depends on your age, so it's a scenario that you have to look at on a case by case basis.
Sonya, you mentioned that by the time you reach 72 and maybe in a year or two, it's gonna be 73.
Yeah.
Can you explain that more? Is that you have to start drawing down by that age? You can't continue to contribute and then start to draw down later?
Yeah, for those particular assets, you know, like the traditional IRAs or the 401ks. You have to start, yeah,
using it by
it's
that
all
time.
the required minimum distribution.
Got it.
Yeah, and so, yeah.
And if you don't, it becomes taxable.
Exactly, you'll be penalized 50% for not taking the distribution when you were.
By the time you're
Theirs.
72.
Just remember it's theirs.
Yes, yeah, yes, that those words together.
What I like about the reverse mortgage, and I have a reverse mortgage. I used it to pay off medical bills for my late wife. And I also used it, as Raphael said, to build an ADU in my backyard. I was able to use funds from the equity in my home. And now what I like about it is if I'm slow in 1 year, I don't have to make any payments on this reverse mortgage. I don't have to pay the interest. I don't have to pay a nickel on it all year long. And if I'm doing well, I'll make payments on the reverse mortgage, and I'll use that with my tax return. So I get to deduct those taxes.
Yeah.
So it works very well for me.
And plus you generated income off the ADU too.
Correct.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah.
But I'm an old man, so I need it.
Yeah, stop it.
Hey,
Okay.
the tax-free bucket, is that, to get to that, you have to use post-tax dollars to fund those, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so, all right, whereas the tax deferred, that's tax-free, in other words,
It's tax-free until you start.
until you
taking it-
start to draw it
taking
down,
distribution.
which the idea is right now, as we're younger, we're earning more, we're at a higher tax bracket.
Right.
When we retire, we're at a lower tax bracket, so now we can start to draw those down, at a
And-
lower tax rate.
Theoretically. Theoretically. Because you know that, remember, who has the power to, change the tax brackets and the
Okay.
tax rates?
All right.
So, yes, if everything holds constant, if the rates hold constant, then that would be correct, but we know
They
that.
raise the tax rates.
Yep,
All right.
they raise the tax rates and then, or they don't change the tax brackets, but they raise the tax rate. Boy, we're kind of doomed. Yeah. Yeah, so.
Wow, great presentation.